Hey, friends, welcome back to the In No Hurry podcast. This is your host, Colt Douglas Claiborne. So happy to be back with you this week for another episode. And I'm really excited to introduce you to this week's guest. Her name is Christina Book. She is a writer who I connected with last year sometime on Substack. And I found that so much of what she writes about resonates with me so deeply. And so I'm excited to have her on here to talk about a lot of topics that are relevant, particularly to millennials, but any young adult, Gen Z, all of that. We talk about dating. She's got a great perspective as a single person on dating. And she really just has a great perspective on navigating certain things that when you get to your 30s, you're expected to have done by now, or at least we kind of feel this internal pressure, buying a house, being married, having kids. And when you don't have those things by a certain age, sometimes we feel this internal pressure that maybe we feel it's a societal pressure, or just we feel like we had goals and we thought we'd be at this place by now and we aren't. And I just think that she has some really good perspective on this. And if you know anything about what I write about, and if you listen to the show at all, you know those are definitely topics that I have talked about. I've been open about my wife and I's infertility journey and just feeling the pressure of wanting to have kids by now and feeling like that should have happened. And I know that other people in my generation are feeling that, whether they haven't been able to buy a house yet, whether they're not married yet, they haven't been able to have kids, all sorts of things. We feel this pressure and we want to speak some truth to that. And so I'm so excited to have her on here. We talked about other things too, about like forming friendships and relationships in adulthood. That can be a really difficult thing. And so we want to speak some truth to that as well, share our experiences, hopefully help you take some action steps if this is something that you're struggling with as well. But if you are a young adult particularly, I think you will enjoy this conversation. And I definitely recommend that you check out Christina's writing on Substack. So thanks so much for tuning in. Here is my conversation with my friend, Christina Book. Christina, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to be chatting with you. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I just got in from the gym, and so my face is red, but I'm fired up and excited and happy to be here.
I have to say, my wife is jealous of your last name. I told her last night who I was talking
Uh
to, and she's like, her last name is Book, because she's such a huge
yes.
reader. And I was like, yep, it'd be hilarious if like there was a boy named Reed, and then his middle name started with an
Mm.
A, and then it was Read a Book. That'd be
We
hilarious. But
tried to convince my parents to name one of my younger siblings that, and they did not think that was a good idea. But either call her, it was a girl. If she was a girl, she could be Rita, or if it was a guy, he could be Reed. But yeah, my parents weren't a fan. But I like to say that I live up to my name because my first job I was a shelver at a library, and I've loved to read since I was a little kid, and I've been a writer for most of my life as well. So I try to live up to my name, and I think I've done a decent job of it.
yeah,
I recently was talking to a lady that I interviewed for my marketing jobs, and she was like, "Your dad must be so proud of you because you're carrying on the family name." I was like, I never thought about it that way, but you're right. I am carrying on the family name in my own way.
in your own way. There you go. Well, you and I connected over Substack. I don't really remember when. I feel like I've connected with a lot of really cool people the last year or so on Substack. I got
Mm,
really a lot more active over the last year. I think I've had Substack for maybe 4 years now, 3 or 4 years,
mm, mhm.
but really got active again in the last year. And somewhere along the way, we connected, and I've really enjoyed reading your work. And so when I was thinking about restarting this podcast, you were one of the few people that came to mind right away. So excited to talk to you. We're going to talk about writing. We're going to talk about relationships. You just wrote about dating,
Mm,
which
mhm.
I have not been in that space in a while. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. And then you and I, we kind of just were thinking about what we could potentially collaborate on in terms of Substack articles. And, we're both millennials, and we chatted about that a few weeks ago. And I
Mhm.
feel like there's a lot of things that we can touch on in that conversation as well. So I'd love to just kind of kick it off. I know you're from Michigan. I don't know a ton much else about you other than what I've written. So I'd love for you to kind of
Yeah,
introduce yourself to the listeners and anybody that might check you out on Substack. What should they know about Christina?
yeah. I guess my name's Christina. My middle name is Rose. My mom decided when I was born that she wanted my name to reflect, both of my parents became Christians around the time that I was born. And so my name is Christina Rose and has Christ Rose in it. And ever since I was young, I very much felt like I had to live up to my name, my last name, my first name, my middle name, and just have had I'm a firstborn. I'm a type A person. I feel like there's like so much to do, and I think that sometimes can trip me up in life. But I love to live a full life. Like I said, I just got back from the gym. I do CrossFit. I'm drinking my bone broth here.
Yeah.
I'm a lot of bit of a health nut, I will say. Fairly crunchy or scrunchy, depending on where you are on that scale. But community is super important to me. I love the people in my life. I think if I had to choose what to do, I would spend all of my time with people, but I do have to go to work and I do have to, be a responsible adult, but love people. And I would say writing for me has very much been part of my story since I was a kid. Like my mom tells me that I used to like scribble notes into books and I'd come and be like, "Mom, let me read you this story." And literally there weren't even letters on the page, but I had this full story played out that I would read to her. And Substack has been a really fun space for me, just of exploring, getting to share my writing and actually build an audience. I never want to be famous. Like part of me, actually, I was getting ready to come on this today. I was thinking, like, man, I just wish that you could become like a famous writer without people knowing who you were. Like, could you just be an anonymous famous writer? And it's not that I don't mind
You
people knowing
can.
me. Yeah, that's true. I could try to build an audience without anyone knowing me. But I've just realized that people can, I mean, I connect with authors like you because like I know you as a person. It's not just this random voice speaking. It's like, oh, you have experiences and stories. And so over the years I've really started to tap into telling parts of my story in hopes that that would connect to someone else's story. And not just teaching. I think when I was younger I did a lot more like Bible study and theology and just kind of like saying facts. As I've gotten older, I've realized people really connect with, and I really connect with people's stories. And so that's become a really powerful part of my life and my work, and especially my Substack. Like, I just want to share what my experiences have been, or what the Lord's teaching me, or something that someone said that spurred something in me, in the hopes that it connects to someone else, it connects to their story, and that they will be like, oh, I felt that way. The greatest compliment I've ever gotten about my writing is someone that says, like, you said the words that I've like felt, but I just like haven't had the words to say it. And like that almost makes me cry when people say that, because that feels very much like I'm thankful to be able to do that and honored to think like, wow, like God gave me these words that I get to offer to the world,
Yeah.
and use them in that way.
Yeah. A lot of good things that I want to get into, but I do not want to skip past the fact that you said before all this that you're drinking bone broth. And I need people to know that are not watching this on video that Christina is drinking bone broth out of a coffee mug, which I knew the benefits of bone broth. I know that there's like protein and it's healthy. I don't know that I've ever heard or seen anybody drink it out of a coffee mug. I got to know, is this like a regular thing?
It's in the winter, it is more regular. My favorite thing to do is make bone broth hot chocolate. So like that is the best. But if I don't have time to make the hot chocolate like today, putting it in a mug with some salt and pepper and some parsley, I it's great. It's
Is it
protein, it's healthy.
is it like drinking like the leftover of a soup without like the other ingredients of a soup? That's what I feel like
It's
it.
Yeah, kind of like if you had chicken noodle soup and you just drank the broth. It's kind of
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
The
You
things
showed
we
it to
do.
me before we started recording and you had it in a mug and I was like, wait a second. In a mug. Okay. All
It's
right.
like
I
tea,
guess,
just not sweet.
yeah. Some people recover from the gym in different ways and you drink bone broth. So that's great.
Yes. Yep. Yep. We all have our own vices.
Yeah. Well, I love what you were saying just about like kind of how you approach Substack. I don't know how long you've been on the platform and if you were doing any blogging
Yeah.
like before that. What I love about it is the social aspect of it. They've, like we were talking about before we recorded, they introduce a lot of different features. It seems like every month the platform
Hmm.
looks different or there's some kind of new feature. But whenever I first got on, I think what made me a little bit more apprehensive was that to read or connect with anybody, you had to subscribe. And I was like, I don't want to
Mm,
subscribe to every single person who I want to read. Then I logged
mm,
back on last year and it was like, oh, you can just follow people. That's kind of nice. So that
mm,
way I can see their work or their notes, which is kind of like a Twitter feed, I guess. Like in
hmm,
if I follow them, I can see all that. I don't have to subscribe to hundreds of
mm,
newsletters. So to me, there's like a good mix of you get to connect in this sort of social
hmm.
stratosphere. It also seems to, in my opinion, it's one of the more positive and encouraging. That feels like K-Love, the positive, encouraging K-Love. That's what they always say.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
feels like positive, encouraging, supportive. It is not full of vitriol like I see on Twitter or even Facebook or
Yeah.
other social media type platforms. So
I've really enjoyed it for that perspective. Again, how long have you been on it? What drew you to the platform? What have you kind of found to be,
Yeah.
I don't know, just like the biggest benefits or joys that you've had since being on there?
Yeah. Yeah, so I started my Substack last April, and I
Okay.
had been blogging prior to that on WordPress, and I was just using my social media to share it,
Yeah.
but I wasn't having a lot of success with that and building an audience, and I didn't really have a great way to like get people to subscribe. And I think I was wrestling with like I want to write more, but I want people to read it if I'm going to write it. Like I want to start to build an audience. I want to get it out there. I actually had a friend that recommended Substack to me. And so I just looked at it. And at first I was kind of skeptical because I was
Yeah.
like, another app. Like, do I really need another social media app? Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be on my phone more. Like, this is not what I need in my life. But like you said, I think pretty quickly I realized how encouraging it was. And I really like the notes element just because it gives you a chance to get to know some of the people on a little bit. Because if you read
Yeah.
someone's article, like that's one long form version of their thoughts, but like the way that someone thinks in the short tells you a
Yeah.
lot about them. So I really enjoyed that. Um, and I think I started it primarily just because I just wanted to have an easier way to share my writing and an easier way to have people subscribe to it. Because like with my last platform, I would have to like put in their
Yeah.
emails, and I was just like, it was just another step that just felt like useless.
Yeah.
And just so like ease of access for people. But I think I've also been surprised at just how social it's been and how fun that has been. Like I have met some really great people on there that I feel like I know, and it is so different from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I think people aren't I think a part of it is it's not so much about image and it's not so much about like how you look or like your
Yeah.
brand, though brand is a part of it for sure. It's a lot more of just like people trying to share how they're experiencing life and like trying to find people like them. And I do think algorithm does a decent job of connecting you with people like that. Like
Yeah.
I tends to mostly have people that I like want to read in my feed. Um, yeah, I've really enjoyed that, and I've started to do some more collaborative things recently, like with you, and a couple other people have reached out to me, and so that's been really fun. Just exploring. I had never even thought of that as a possibility with
Yeah.
writing. In my mind, I was like, I'm just gonna write blog posts and hope somebody reads them. And but to think of like, oh, like I could add someone else's story to mine, which gives some more credibility with what you're saying, but it's also more interesting. Like it's it adds a new avenue and kind of a new angle. That's really fun. It can make it more journalistic, maybe a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I've really enjoyed that part of it. I kind of have found a way to segment, not that I want to be pigeonholed into a certain area, but like I have found sort of like the Christian writer corner of Substack.
Hmm.
And what I like about it is it really, it's almost like my wife and I are watching Love is Blind right now. And the whole premise of the show is to fall in love with
Yes,
somebody
I'm
based
watching
on,
it right now too.
yes,
I just started watching it last night.
it is like, it is our guilty pleasure. But, you know, the whole premise
Okay,
is
can
like,
I just say there's so many memeable moments in that. Like last night I was like, you could take like so many clips of this and just
yes.
like make fun of this. Like it's the whole thing is just hilarious. But anyway, go on.
Like the whole premise is like you fall in love with the person because of what is on the inside and not exterior. Which,
Hmm.
gosh, we might as well get on a whole tangent. The fact that they make them see each
Yeah.
other, then they go to a honeymoon, and then the whole time they're just talking about having sex. I'm like, I thought the whole thing was about to get to know
I
each other
know.
for your soul, and then now the guy's like, oh, I usually only date girls that do CrossFit and have a six pack. It's like the whole
Yeah.
point was to fall in love with her soul, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
but
Like you should have
but
talked about that before, but okay.
yeah, yeah. But point being, the with Substack, I feel like it's a chance for me to get to know people for like what they think, their
Mm.
creativity, and like
Mm.
who they are as just a creative person versus
Mm.
here's what I show on the internet. Like this is my
Mm.
aesthetic and this and that. So I just I don't know, I'm an Enneagram 4. I don't know if you care about the Enneagram
Mm.
or have really like looked
Mhm.
into it, but like I just
It's
really
cool.
care about like people's creativity, their authenticity, much more than just anything that is like superficial. So,
Mm.
in theory, I like the idea of Love is Blind, but then it's like, okay, you have to decide in 4 weeks if you're going to get married. I'm like, can we not just date? Like, I don't know. There's a
Yeah.
whole, I think to some people, love could be blind. Yeah, sure. But then it's like, hey, let's do this like big reveal. And then you start to look at each other, and then you can tell when people are like, oh, I'm not attracted to them. And then all of a sudden it's like,
Yep.
oh, I don't really like them like I thought I did. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
for those people, and it's always like every season is like they're all good looking people, and then
I
this
know.
this year they had the girl on there who has like kind of some body defects because she had
Yeah.
the scars removed. And I'm like, that's the
Yeah.
first time that they've had anybody that like had
Mm.
any sort of blemish that you could
Mm-hmm.
look at. So I'm like, okay, you're
Mm-hmm.
getting all these good looking people. Of course, everybody's going to be attracted to each other. So a whole other tangent,
Right.
but yes, I do like Substack because for the most part, it is like, hey, here's what's going on in my brain and my heart, and I'm going to put
Yep.
those words out there. And so
Yeah.
I really like it from that perspective. And I'm curious from
You
your
should pitch
perspective.
that to Substack of how they should sell. They should use that to sell their
Yeah,
product.
that should be
This is
their
Substack is love is blind, writers are blind. Like, I don't know.
yeah, writers writers are blind. But it is kind of, I mean, you're in a vulnerable spot as a writer if you're depending on what you're writing about. I mean, for most people in Christian Substack, we're writing about matters of the heart, things that are going on in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is really personal stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of writers, that's not really a problem. That you want to share what's
Mm-hmm.
going on because you hope that it relates to people. But there can be times whenever maybe you're a little nervous to write something or share something, and I'm curious how you've walked that line with anything that you have felt called to write, and then you're like, well, do I really want to put this in there? Do I want to leave this detail in
Yeah.
there? How have you kind of figured out the right balance of how much vulnerability to share, what details to keep personal, etc.?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. There's been multiple times that my fingers literally shaking as I'm like, yes, please post. Do I really want? Um, but one thing that I think on a broader scale is really important to me is like that I protect the people in my life. So because I have these deep relationships with people, like sometimes I will refer to maybe like the kids in my life who are really impactful to me or comments that people have made, but I try to be vague enough that like even they might not know I'm talking about them. Not because I'm trying to, and sometimes I do tell them, like if they ask me, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a conversation we had, or sometimes I'll send it to them and tell them that. But I try to be vague enough that no one else reading it would know that because I
Yeah,
do. Just because I'm comfortable sharing my soul doesn't mean that everybody else in
right.
my life is comfortable sharing their soul. So, um, yeah, that's definitely one element of it. And I think the other side of it is there's times that it does feel vulnerable. Like I wrote an article about why the kids in my life are so important to me because I
Mhm.
really want to be a mom, but I'm not a mom. But like I have invested a lot in my best friend's kids and they've become like really, really dear to me and precious. And it felt vulnerable to tell the world that like I want to be a mom, but I'm not.
Yeah,
Like it just, those types of things it's hard to share that stuff because it's like a deep desire. And there's a part of me that can be have an insecurity around but it's interesting because I find that the things I'm most afraid to talk about are often the things that resonate the most with people, which I think
yeah,
makes sense because it's vulnerability. Vulnerability tends to resonate. So in those moments, I try to remind myself of that. Like, yeah, it's a little scary to tell the world this. It's a little scary to be honest about my desires that haven't been met or the things that I want in life. But someone's going to read that and they're going to be like, oh gosh, I feel that way too. And I'm grateful that someone said it. And so I think that's a piece that I try to remind myself of. Um, and even just like remembering like my experiences, obviously they're to draw me close to the Lord and to build a deep relationship with the Lord, but they're not all about me. And I'm really grateful for that because I would think I'd be really annoyed if everything that happened to me and everything in my life was all about me. They're like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, like why I don't need to go through this again or whatever. But like I try to remind myself that the things that I go through or the experiences I have are they're often for other people. Like Second Corinthians talks about that of being able to sympathize with other people and understand people and share our burdens. And I think I take that pretty seriously of the things that I go through aren't just about me. So how do I invite other people into that in a way that gives them hope or gives them insight or even just, yeah, like seeing things a different way. Sometimes that's all we need. It's just like a different angle to look at something. So I try to remember that in those moments, but it's still scary. Even though I've been writing for years and I've been putting stuff out there for years, I think it's even scarier when people that I know in real life read my stuff. Like
yeah,
today at the gym, one of the guys walked up to me and he was like, "Hey, about that thing about insecurities?" And first I was like, "What are you talking?" I was like, "Oh, you read?" And it's just like this into like, oh, like the people on Substack. It's like I'm not going to necessarily see you in real life, Cole, or like it's like, yo, you're like this person that reads my stuff over
yeah,
here, but you don't really know me in my everyday life. And then when
yeah,
those people in your everyday life come up to you and are like, "Oh, I saw this article about dating," and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that I did write that." And it's just I've had to work through some of that, especially as you become more like because my stuff is coming up more and people are getting more interested in it, and just recognizing like the people in my life who choose to read that, I feel almost even more honored because they know like I'm just
yeah,
your average person. I mean, not that I'm anybody famous on Substack, but like they know all of my quirks and like who I
yeah,
am, and the fact that they take that and read it and are like, oh, I was really encouraged. I'm like, wow, like that means even more to me than somebody else, because like, you know how imperfect I am, and you see my flaws. And yeah, so there's a lot of discomfort with it for sure. But I
Yeah,
think I can't help but do it. Like it's just kind of one of those things. Like
it's like your personality.
I have to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been that way too. Like I've always been super. Probably I overshare in
Mm,
situations, and I just, I want people to know the true me, and I don't really
hmm
have a problem sharing certain things. I mean, I wrote two articles last fall that were as vulnerable as I could get. One was about, it was a very real like look into my struggle with anxiety and like getting on
mm,
Prozac and just different things like that. And so
mm.
that was really difficult. And then I wrote an article about just our struggle with infertility, and that was,
That was a powerful one. Yeah, I
and
read that.
I mean, and the feedback that I got from that was incredible, because there were all these people
Mm,
that, you when you go through something like that, you feel like you're alone. And there were people from, that I knew from high school, from back home, people that I hadn't talked to since college, that reached out and they were like, "Hey, we went through this." Just people that you don't even know that that's their story. And
yeah.
and part of it, I know people are wondering. I mean, Emily and I have been married for over 8 years now, and I know people are wondering, like, why don't they have any kids? And the people that knew us, they knew our story. And then I finally just got tired of like answering questions and like
hmm
just knowing people were wondering about it. And I was like, look, I'm going to put this out there. Here's our
Mm.
story. I don't want to have to
Now
talk
you
about it
know.
because it's
Yeah.
not really something that like, people are just like, "Hey, when are you gonna have kids?" Which that could be a whole other conversation. Is like, let's not ask people when or if they're gonna have kids. It's a very personal
Yep.
decision. You also don't know what they're going through. But I just was like, look, I'm gonna put this out there. Now people know
Mm,
they can pray for us, and now hopefully I don't have to answer these questions going forward,
mm,
because
hmm
it's just not fun. And so, like,
mm,
I will happily talk about it if I bring it up. Like I
mm, mm,
told my friends and my family that Emily and I were starting to see a fertility specialist. So I was like,
mm.
I'll let you guys in on those experiences. But it's very
Mm.
hard sometimes whenever you write things and it's like you don't know how people are going to react to it. And then sometimes it's really,
Yeah.
really positive. It's really uplifting, and you feel like, wow, I'm really glad I wrote that. And so
hmm
I'm curious. Obviously, you don't have to give any names, but like, have you gotten feedback privately where people are like, hey, that really helped me, or like that really resonated with me?
Yeah, I have. I think more probably actually publicly, which I'm impressed by. A lot
Yeah.
of people have commented. And I'm like, wow, that like it's encouraging that other people are willing to say that. I think that's just true that like vulnerability begets vulnerability, and it takes someone going first. But I have had a few people, even in my life, that have just been like, hey, I just never. I actually had posted a note about like how I made breakfast burritos for my friends when they have kids. I go over and I make a thing of breakfast burritos, and I make energy balls to put in the freezer, and it's like it's become like a ritual for me that like it helps
Mhm.
prepare my mind for this change in this friendship, but also it's a way to serve them. And I
That's really
shared about
cool.
it on I'll know, and I also shared about it on LinkedIn, and I had a couple people that were like, man, like I just have never thought about that. Like I have some friends that are having kids, like I should do that for them. And I think it was, again, just it's kind of this vulnerable thing of like I'm trying to navigate my friends being in different seasons of life than me, and like how to do that well, and how to serve them, and how to be part of those seasons of their life. And it's easy for me to just kind of assume like, oh, other people have their own ways of doing that, but maybe they don't. And kind of offering that invites those things. So yeah, I think I've actually had a lot more people that have shared more publicly back, which has
That's
really
really
been
cool.
encouraging just to see people willing to say, hey, I want that too. And I also don't have that, but it's a good reminder that you can be hopeful in those spaces.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really cool. One of the articles that we'll get into that you wrote recently was about just experiences you've had dating. Uh, Before we get into the dating conversation, I brought up this message I got from somebody. I was kind of crowdsourcing some article topics back in December.
Mm,
And this person asked, basically, I'm going to make sure I get their question right. It said, would love to hear your thoughts on friendship and making friends as a single adult
mm,
without the connection points of kids' activities or spouse couple activities. And
mm,
I've not been single in a while, and so it's hard for me to kind of think. But I remember being a single adult, and yeah, it is hard. And I know seeing the single people in our church, it can be
mm,
difficult to integrate. Whenever people start having kids and their lives kind of surround that, and then they kind of segment off
mm,
and hang out with other couples that are pregnant, etc. Um, I would love your feedback on this because I feel like you're much more in a spot to answer this than I am.
Mm,
But basically, as you were kind of navigating adulthood, I think adult friendships are very, very difficult to find and maintain and create new ones. And I have
mm,
such a heart for it. And so I like that my church has a ministry designed specifically for young adults, like 18 to
mm,
30s. Because that's a really difficult time whenever you're kind of graduating college and you don't really
mm-hmm,
know what you're doing next in your life.
mm-hmm.
So, what advice would you give to somebody that's seeking out, um, trying to make friends as an adult? Maybe their friends have gotten married and they're not quite there yet, or their friends have children and they're not quite there yet.
Mm.
How have you navigated that, and what advice would you offer?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny because I think when you're in like college and even just after college, there's just like so many reasons to connect with people. And when you're all in the same boat, it just is easier. It's like I remember I had a really awesome friend group in college and post college, and we would like hang out probably like 3 or 4 nights a week. And just like we'd call each other, be like, hey, what are you doing? Do you want to go to the mall? Hey, what are you doing? Want to go to a movie? Hey, you want to come up? Like we just did life together. And it was so much fun and like so exciting, and just there was always something going on. And then after that, and like, as soon as people started to get married or like got more serious about work, because I feel like when you're in that stage of life and you're not super serious about work, you're not as concerned about going to bed early and like being prime at from 8 to 5. You're kind of like, oh, I need this random job, so it doesn't really matter if I stay up till 3, like
Yeah.
whatever. But like as people either start getting more into those kind of careers where you have to be more on top of it, or they start dating or getting married, having kids, like it just becomes more complicated. And it was interesting. So my story is a little bit unique with that because I ended up living in Europe for a couple of years as my friends were getting married. So I moved when I was 20, I think I was 25. I moved to Europe for about 2.5 years. And so that was the time period that all of my friends were getting married and starting to have kids. And so when I moved back at like 28, I came back and was like, whoa, like this is different. Like, and I need to find my footing in it. But what I realized pretty quickly was that I needed to recognize, well, one, I needed to accept the differences in the friendships of like, okay, these people are in a different stage of life than I am, but they're still my friends. Like, and I have to believe the best of them, even if maybe they're not always initiating as much, or if they're not as easily accessible to me, like I still have to trust their heart. And I also have to be willing to accept the changes in friendships. I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot is like as you go through life, like you morph into so many different versions of yourself. Like I know when I moved back from Europe, like I was a much different person than I was before. And I watched as each of my friends have had kids, like they have become different people. Like, and then as they had another kid to that, they become a different person. And I could be really sad and be like, you were like this before and we connected on this. But like there is so much room to grieve the change. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And I've talked about that with my friends. Like, oh, like I missed when we just would go grocery shopping together on a random Tuesday night. Like now we have to plan that weeks in advance. Like, but embracing like, but you know what? Now I can come over to your house because I'm single and I don't have a kid. I can just come over and hang out anytime I want and just like have fun with you and hang out with your kid, big dinner together. Like, it's you have to kind of grieve what has changed and embrace the reality. And something that's been really helpful to me, I think, is just recognizing that there's seasons of friendship. Like there's times that my friends have been there for me when I've been in the dumps, when like going through breakups, transition. And in the seasons of life that my friends are in some ways, maybe I am giving a little bit more just because I have the flexibility to go over to their house and spend time with them and spend time with their kids. And maybe they're more distracted because they have kids right now. So they're not like, we're not sitting down having like super focused conversations. But that's a season. And I don't want to miss out on that just because maybe it's not as fun or not as easy as it was a few years ago. Like I want to find ways to be part of that because I want these people to be in my life forever. So like even in times where you might give a little bit more or not feel like you're getting as much out of the friendship, like continuing to invest and initiate is so important. And I'd say that goes into my next point because that specifically applies to like friendships that you've had previously that change. I think there's also it's hard when you're like trying to make friends and those people are in different seasons, and because that's a whole nother thing, it's a lot easier to kind of morph friendships. But one thing that I've tried to be really intentional about, and I've had a lot of people that have been intentional about this with me, is not being afraid to go first. I think we have such a fear of saying I want to be your friend and I don't know if that comes from, it probably comes from being a kid at some point and getting rejected. There's probably some wounds there that you have to go to counseling for or whatever. But just like there's such a fear of like showing. I wrote an article about this recently too, about like of saying like, hey, I like you, I want to spend time with you, like why don't
Yeah.
we say that to each other? And I think we're afraid of rejection there. But being I think there's I actually recently made a new friend, and it's been really fun because neither of us are like looking for a best friend, but we're just looking for someone to hang out with.
Yeah.
And so it's been such an easy friendship. I'm like, hey, you want to go line dancing? Hey, you want to go swing dancing? Hey, you
That's
want to come
cool.
play volleyball with me? And it's like, there's not like a pressure there. It's just like, hey, I just want to do stuff with you. And if you don't want to do it with me, like, that's okay. Like, we don't have to do stuff together all the time. But I think an openness with that is really important, not like always going in like, this person is going to be my whole world, because everybody, that's freaky for one. But two, it's hard to build a friendship and get to know someone if you're so like, this person's going to be my person. But just putting it out there, like inviting people to things, not being afraid to go first. And I also, I guess the last thing I'd say is like finding unique ways to meet people. Like I live in a smallish town, but I live in like Southwest Michigan, and there's a lot of people here, but it's not like one of some of the bigger cities where you'd have a lot more connections to like a lot of more things happening. But just get creative. I've just tried to get creative about things. Like we have young professionals group that I've started attending and made some new friends there. I joined a CrossFit gym because I was like, that's a great way to meet new people. Playing volleyball in an intramural sports league.
That's great.
It's just like finding those things that maybe it's not like my top choice of like this would be my favorite thing to do, but it's like this is a great way to meet new people, and like who knows, I could fall in love with it, and then usually I do, and then I have to decide I can't do everything, so then it becomes that problem. But I think just being willing to push yourself out of your comfort zone and meet people, like there are opportunities like that, and it's easy sometimes to be like, oh well, I don't want to do that. And one last thing that actually I've been working on recently, I think so. I'm an oldest, and I can be rather independent and think like I'm just gonna go do it by myself. But lately, I've been challenging myself to be like, who can you bring with you? Like, you don't have to do it by like I'll go to like a networking event by myself and be like, why did I go by myself? Like, why didn't I invite one of my friends? Like,
Yeah.
this would have been way more fun with them. And so, like, even just finding who those people are and not being offended if they say no. Like, all my friends said no, so I went by myself last night. But it was still like I still invited them, and I was proud of myself for that, because it's like you never know how you might connect someone to someone else or how they might connect you to someone else. And I think just being open in that way is really refreshing, and it's a little bit of a lost art, I think, of communicating interest in each other and inviting each other into life, and kind of like that doing life together stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're not as good at as we used to be, I think, and it's
Yeah,
harder when you're older and have more complex lives.
and I just found like college was such a sweet spot because like you're like in this bubble where you're around everybody and like you can just kind of go to their door. Like I remember just going to like somebody else's dorm room in the middle of the night. We're like, hey, we're watching this movie. And it's
Yeah.
like, all right, cool. Like you just pop in there. I remember when I lived in the dorms, it's like everybody had it. They called it an open door policy. Like we just leave our doors open and you just pop in and say hey to your friends. And then
Yeah.
I had a group of friends and there were 8 girls that were part of this friend group. 4 of them lived in one apartment, and then the other 4 lived across the hall, kind of like a friends situation. And we would all hang out at one of their apartments and kind of just go between the two. And we had a lot of like Halloween parties and this and that, and it was just like man, that was so easy to make friends there. And then everybody kind of disperses, and you go off into your own thing. And I'm grateful, for guys like we get together like whenever you're an adult. It's like hey, let's all go play golf. And that's kind of the thing. And I played rec basketball a few years. Our team is not playing this year because everybody is super busy or injured or has a kid. I tore my meniscus playing in that league last year, and it's still not.
Problem with getting older.
Yeah. Men's softball is like, it's just a death trap. I mean, everybody, once you get into like your 30s and you try to play softball, I pulled my hamstring a couple years ago. It's probably one of the most painful things I've ever done. So my wife is like, awful. You are not playing softball going forward. But golf is fun. And like, I have a friend at church who he's just like part of he feels like it's his calling is to connect other guys. And he's been such a catalyst in
that's awesome.
helping all these guys at our church become friends. And for the last 2 years, we've gone on a trip in the fall.
But like, it's just been so nice to have guys here to share in the same interests. We've had people come over to watch basketball, Super Bowl parties, that sorts of thing. So I'm grateful, but it took a few years when we moved here. I didn't really know a lot of people. My wife and I live in the same city where we both went to college. And the first couple of years of our marriage, we lived in a town in Indiana where I'm from. And so she didn't know anybody there. I had friends still there. My family was there. But when we moved back here to Bowling Green, we a lot of my friends from college had moved elsewhere. A lot of her friends from college had moved
Hmm.
elsewhere. So in a lot of ways, it was like starting over. And so we
Yeah.
were fortunate that we sort of already had a church that we had she had attended this church
Mm.
while we were dating, while she lived here, and then uh, that was just like we're going to go there. And then they thankfully have a young adult ministry, but I know not every place
Mm.
has that. So I'm
Hmm.
glad you gave some examples of like where you've gone to make friends because I think that's the hard thing. It's like when you're an adult, you kind of have to put yourself out there,
Yeah.
and that can be really challenging for people once they kind of get into a job and they kind of want to stay in that sphere and that realm.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm glad you said that
Yeah.
because you got, like you said, volleyball, CrossFit. I don't know what else, bone broth drinking clubs. I don't know. Uh,
Well, and I think one thing that I think has been really encouraging to me, and maybe I shouldn't be surprised by this, but like so many people are looking for friends. And so I think it's easy sometimes to go into those situations thinking like, oh, I'm the only one here that doesn't know anyone. I'm the only one here who doesn't like have friends. But like the amount of people that, I've connected with in these places that like we've started to do things together. And like I think it just takes me not afraid to initiate that and invite that because I think a lot of people are really lonely. Like just because we're home more, we have all this technology that allows us to be home more and not as connected. And so I think
yeah,
a lot of people are really looking for relationships. So it's like if we can just find the other people who are looking for them, like, they're there. It's just asking
yeah.
and being
Maybe
willing. And
maybe
I will
this
say
is.
walking up to go ahead.
I was gonna say like maybe this already exists, but like there's dating apps for you to find like a boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah,
Surely there are apps where you can just like find friends. I don't know, like
probably. I
like a
mean,
Tinder
there's
for
like
friends.
yeah. I think there's gotta be. I know there's like group meet or like groups that like people will
Yeah.
make groups online where you can like sign up to go to like like a writing club or a book club or like just as ways to make friends and there's lots of Facebook pages. Yeah, there's I haven't done much with that, so I can't say I suggest it because I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I know that it's out there and honestly, like something else that has been fun for me, like I live in a small apartment right now, but I'd love to host and not being afraid to say like, you know what? I don't have like the greatest space. I don't have like a big TV for movie nights. I don't have a ton of space. But whenever I've had people over, they've had a blast. Like
Yeah.
people are just looking for opportunities to connect. So it's like being willing to kind of do something that's like, well, it's not perfect, but if you wait till it's perfect, you'll never do it. And
Yeah.
just being willing to invite people over and being okay if they reject you and say no. Like
Yeah.
that sucks too, but but it's fun when they say yes.
Yeah, this reminds me, a few years ago, I had a conversation on this podcast with Jen Oshman, who's an author. I don't know if
Hmm,
you're familiar with her.
I don't think so.
She wrote a book as part of this series. I think the series, it was called Find Your Church or something like that. I have a
Hmm,
bunch of the books behind me. But she
hmm,
wrote a book, and I can't remember what hers was. I think it was on like Community, maybe.
hmm,
But I remember having this conversation with her, and I came away from that conversation feeling really convicted to take initiative at my church. Like if I saw
hmm,
somebody that was around my age that seemed to
hmm,
be kind of they're alone or they just didn't seem to
hmm,
know anybody, I was like, I really want to be the type of person that makes a connection. I know that churches always
hmm,
say that, they're like, hey, reach out, make new people feel welcome. And I
hmm.
think for some people that's still a little uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
I remember coming away from that feeling like, man, that's something that I really need to do better at and just
Hmm,
make initiative because I know when my wife and I first started going to the young adult ministry, basically it meets on Monday nights and it was like essentially
hmm,
it's like a church service. You go and there's worship, then there's teaching, and we would go in the first couple of years, not a single person would talk to
hmm.
us. And so we were like, do we want to keep going? Let's take a
Yeah.
guess on how many people will say anything to us tonight. And it
Yeah.
was just like we didn't
Hmm,
kind of felt alone. And I know that there's other people that feel like that. And it
hmm,
sounds like you have done pretty well at sort of taking that initiative. And I feel like that's such a somebody has to do that in adult. Like I was mentioning my friend who has sort of
hmm.
taken initiative to introduce other guys to each other.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would recommend? I mean, obviously that's easy way of saying it, but like I guess another way is how important is that for maybe us as believers to be the ones
Hmm.
that take initiative to make others feel included or um, just initiate that conversation and that friendship?
Yeah. I think it's like vitally important.
Yeah.
I say that knowing that everyone has different personalities and different giftings. And I I will say that when I was actually very shy growing up, I was like, I went through a phase, I was like super, super chatty as a kid, and then I was really, really shy. And then as I became an adult, I like had to figure out how to, I was homeschooled, which didn't, I wasn't stunted in my socialization because I had so much social stuff happening, but I think I always felt like a little bit different, which I think is a great quality as adulthood because everybody's a little weird and embracing weirdness is great. But that said, I think I was able to kind of keep some of my shyness later than some people just because I was able to be home more around my family. And so as I got into adulthood, I had to do a lot of work to get over some of that social anxiety in situations. And something that someone told me that has stuck with me my whole life is like when you walk into a room, do you walk into a room and think, here I am, hopefully someone comes to talk to me? Or do you walk in the room and say, oh, there you are, like I'm so happy to see you? And I think as Christians, whatever our personality is and however comfortable we are with people, having that attitude of like, I want to serve that person and like I want them to feel seen, like that helped me get over a lot of my social anxiety for one, but also has just enriched my life deeply because of the people that that's allowed me to connect with. And I think the other thing that someone told me once, and again, I wish I remembered who these people were, but so long ago, this was ingrained into my mind. But they said, whenever you walk into a room, like think of yourself as the host, not in the way of like you're better than everyone else, but like what would the host do in this situation? Like whether that's at a networking event or at the CrossFit gym or at a volleyball game, like how can you make the people in your presence feel comfortable? And I think that having that kind of attitude really comes from a servant's heart. Like you're not just there to boost your ego, you're not just there to for other people to make you feel good. Like you're there to really see if you can make other people feel comfortable. And I'm not going to say that that's easy. Like I struggle with it all the time. I walk into the room and I want people to see me and accept me and be happy to see me. But I try to shift my perspective in that and remember like it's not really about me. It's about how am I serving these other people. And I will say, whenever I've done that, like it has fed me. Like it always, like it so often comes back and blesses you when you give freely in that way. And like you said, I think so many people go through life feeling very unseen, like whether at a young adults group or even at work, like just feeling like nobody knows me except
Yeah.
for what I do. And in someone that, like one thing that is really, I try to be really creative about is asking creative questions to like get people past the, what do you do for work? Where do you
Right.
live?
Yeah.
Where are you from? Like, I love to ask, like, oh, is this something that you always wanted? Are you doing the thing that you always wanted to do? Or like, what was your childhood dream? Or like just finding creative questions to ask, like, well, what are you building? Like, what are you excited about? Just trying to like offer people the opportunity to connect on a deeper level. And I think it's as Christians, we're put on the world to bring light and to bring Christ. And I think that hopefulness and that light and that like I see you is really, really powerful. And I don't think we always recognize how powerful that is. Maybe in some ways because we do experience it a little bit more in the church
Yeah.
because that is more of this Christian culture. But even in the church, I think we need to see each other more and tell each other that we see each other, not just assume the other person knows like, oh, I see you. I care about you. I'm happy that you're here. And
Yeah.
and then going the next step to invite them into your life in some way, like whatever that might look like.
Yeah, that's really good. I think you said a lot of really good things there. And obviously, I had mentioned at the top that I wanted to get into the article that you wrote about dating. And I think about the people that are in my life who are single, that are adults, even the people that I go to church with that are single. I know that
Mm,
they're not only looking for their group of friends, their people, but they're also hoping to
mm,
find somebody that they can date and potentially marry. And I
mm-hmm,
know I really appreciated your article about dating because I kind of had the approach growing up, and we maybe got into this conversation when we first connected.
mm-hmm,
But growing up, sort of in the purity culture, it was like it almost felt like even in high school, every relationship I had, it was like, is this somebody I could marry? And I
mm,
think to some degree, it's like I get that maybe is healthy to be like, I want to date people that are aligned with my values. But I feel like
mm-hmm,
I put so much pressure on every relationship.
mm,
And I really liked the way that you framed it, where it was like, I learned so much about myself. I learned so many new things from people that I dated that I would not have been introduced to. That could even be
mm-hmm,
just like food that you like now, or
mm-hmm. Yeah.
like a movie that you like. It doesn't have to be something so grand and spectacular. But I know that for as people get older, there's and I'm thinking of specific friends that I have where I know that they're feeling a certain pressure as it
Mm,
relates to dating, as it relates to marriage. And I think a lot of us, and I am guilty of this as it relates to our fertility journey, of kind of looking at this
Mm,
clock, this proverbial
mm,
clock of like, hey,
yeah.
this should have happened by this time and it hasn't,
Mm,
and now putting a lot of pressure on myself. So a lot of layers to unpack here, but
mm.
anybody that's listening, first go read Christina's article about dating. I think it was like the five thing. What is it? The five things that I learned about. I
The five
forget.
things, the five things the guys I've dated have taught me.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
And I just thought that that was really good, and I would love to know kind of where the heart for sharing that came from. You don't have to share
Yeah.
your whole dating experience, but I'm just curious. Like, was there something that sort of, I don't know, lit the spark for you to write this? And
Yeah.
I know obviously people are hopefully going to go read it, but what would you want the biggest takeaway from your
Yeah.
experience in your article and just, I don't know, your advice? What is the biggest takeaway that you would offer somebody when it comes to dating? I don't want to say later in adulthood because like we're still in our 30s, it's not that late, but I know some people they think if they're not married by 30 that that is considered late, and maybe societally it
Yeah.
is. So I don't know, maybe it's another
Yeah.
question, destigmatizing that and breaking
Yeah.
down that sort of cliche idea.
Yeah. Oh, you got so much good stuff there. I guess first off, I always swore to myself that I would never write about dating. That was something that I was like, never gonna write about that. I don't want to be no guru or anything like that. But what spurred me to kind of step out of that space was primarily being so discouraged by all the content that's out there right now around dating. I think especially on social media, like on Instagram, there's just so much divisiveness between men and women right now, where guys are just like, women are so confusing and they're so hard to please, blah, blah, blah. Women are like, oh, men are terrible and men don't. It's just this just creates this like echo chamber where nobody's like listening to each other, but also nobody's connecting and people aren't dating. So it's like all this advice people give me is actually not that helpful. And I think the other reason why I've had a lot of insecurity about writing about dating is because I haven't gotten married. And so some part of me is like, why should I give advice about dating? Like I haven't succeeded. But a friend recently challenged me on that where she was like, but you didn't marry somebody terrible.
Yeah.
Like you've successfully gone through relationships and navigated them wisely and evaluated like, no, that person isn't right for me. And I think um kind of back to that destigmatizing piece of there is an element of truth of like I haven't found somebody and there could be something that I'm doing wrong that I need to change that needs to be fixed for that. I'm willing to acknowledge that. But the reality is that there's a lot of imperfect people that are married. Like perfection doesn't equal marriage and
Oh yeah.
like being fully arrived in life doesn't equal marriage. And I think there's everyone's story is a little bit different. I think I could look at a lot of different reasons why things didn't work out for me exactly. Like so when I was a kid, I was going to get married at 18, have my first kid by 21. I was one of those. I had my plan and it didn't
Yeah.
turn out that way at all. I'm 31 and I'm happily single, but still, wanting that and having a desire for that. And I think um the other thing that spurred me to write about it was I kept hearing people say, and I say this in my article, there's just no good people out there. And
Yeah.
I hear people say that a lot. And I've worked so, so hard in my life to not say that. Because there's times I felt that, like when I walked away from another relationship or another failed date or another conversation that didn't go well, I'm like, is there anybody good that's still single? And then I remind myself, I'm like, if a guy said that to me, I would be so offended. Like if a guy on the other side of the table was like, "There's just no good women out there," I'd be like, "Hey, look, like I think I'm a pretty good person. Not
Yeah.
perfect, but I'm a good person, and I would be a good partner." And so realizing like you have like that positivity is actually really important. And I think one of the things the biggest takeaway that I was hoping for people from that article and that I try to speak into people in my life is you have to have hope. Like if you're trying to date and have no hope, like please don't date. Like it's just not kind to that person across from you that's trying to be hopeful. Like
Yeah.
I have worked, and I mean, there's times that I've taken off of dating. There's like last year I didn't date for like 6 months because I had dated super like consistently for a while, a lot of different people, and I was just like I'm kind of burnt out and I'm not very hopeful. So like nobody deserves that. So I'm going to take 6 months off to just focus on my life. And I had job changes going on and stuff with my family. And I'm really glad that I did that because I was able to step back into the dating space again with kind of like a hopeful perspective. And I think having hope is so important because I mean, how does one like fall in love without having hope? Like if you're just
Right.
like, this isn't gonna work out. I do know, I've known some people where that has happened, where they've kind of been like, this is never gonna happen, and it happens. So like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it's such a disservice to people to go into situations and not be hopeful. And I also think it takes like I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic. I will definitely admit that, and I think I love the idea of falling in love. And even though like it hasn't worked out for me, I still think that's going to happen someday. And I want to hold on to that hope. And I think a part of it is like ultimately if that doesn't happen on Earth, I still want to live with that hope that it would. Like I think I'll be a better person for keeping my heart open in that way. And I also like I think that's attractive. Like when I hear people like other girls or guys that talk like, oh, it's never blah blah blah, like I just have to do. I'm like, that's really not attractive. Like that makes me not want to go out with you. Like, and it's really attractive when someone's like, no, I believe that this could happen. And like I'm hopeful about it, even though it hasn't worked out before. Like
Yeah.
and you do need to work through like I won't deny that there haven't been things that I've had to work through in my life and times that I've had to really cry it out and things that I've grieved. Like you have to grieve. I think it's John Piper that says like grieve the life that you don't have so that you can love the life that you do or something like
Yeah.
that.
Good.
And that is so real. And I think especially in the area of dating and singleness, you have to grieve it. So I'm not trying to say be all hopeful butterflies, but like you have to hold on to at least a shred of hope. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So that's the biggest thing that I wanted people to take away was like even if it hasn't worked out the way that you've wanted, like where's the good? And like where can you see the good? And even the other day, I was telling one of my friends, I was like, you know, all the guys I've dated have been Christians. So even if maybe I didn't love how they did a certain thing, or I didn't love how things ended with them, or I didn't love how they treated me, like I'm going to spend eternity with them. So like I want to like still see some good in them. Like they're my brothers in Christ. And even if I don't love how things played out, like they're still valuable people and they're still people that I want to respect, which that's partly why I think I've also been cautious to write or talk about dating because I don't want to speak badly of people, even if I could say like, well, yeah, he did that or he. It's like
Yeah.
nobody needs to know that about that person. Like those people deserve to be respected as image bearers, and um, so yeah, I think that's the other part of it is just these people are our fellow believers, and like how do we love them well, even if they've disappointed us and let us
Yeah.
down. And you learn a lot about loving people sacrificially through dating. So but
Absolutely.
that's a big one.
That's really good. There's some perspectives there that I hadn't really even thought of, and I I never really had a lot of time from in my early 20s to when I met my wife Emily that I was
Mm,
single for a whole lot of time, and um,
mm,
I know like I'm trying to think if I were still single at this age, I would
mm,
probably feel the pressure of like man, is this ever going to work out? I feel like I would kind of allow myself
yeah.
to think down that path, and then I know that just knowing my tendencies, that there maybe would be a chance where I would settle for somebody that I didn't want to be with, and I can't remember.
Mm,
Maybe whenever you and I connected the first time, I maybe shared this. I mean, the girl that I dated before I met my wife, I dated her for three and a
mm,
half years, and it was one of those relationships that should have ended way sooner. But it was
mm,
like, well, this is somebody who likes me and I
mm-hmm,
enjoy the attention and the affection, and it may not be perfect, but I enjoy it.
mm-hmm,
And that's an example where I look back and I'm like, I wish that I had maybe held myself to the higher standards that I had. And so all of the
mm,
questions, all of that to say, I guess the question would be, how do you maintain that discipline where,
mm,
maybe by now, like you said, you thought you'd be married, and maybe there's
mm-hmm,
people that feel that pressure and just to get married and check that off. They maybe settle for somebody that isn't really who they want, but it's somebody. And I think this
mm-hmm,
advice could maybe even apply to when you're waiting for anything, whether that's a job
mm,
or um, a house that you want to buy, anything. I mean, in this case, we're
yeah,
talking about dating, but
yeah,
how do you maintain that discipline of knowing, hey, this is good. It's not, it's not it. And I don't want to say the
mm,
one. I don't know that there's ever like the one, but like it's not
yeah,
like you know when it's supposed to be the person that you're going to spend a longer time with. How do you have
mm-hmm,
that discipline to know like okay, this is good, but it's not something that I need to continue?
yeah. There's probably two things that come to mind with that. One is just knowing like I think when you're settled in your identity in Christ and like that you are loved and complete, whether or not you are, regardless of your relationship status, there is a part of that it makes it a little bit easier to say no when it's not right, just because you're like that person isn't going to change who you are at the end of the day. And so that's one piece of it. But I also think that that comes with, and like how that's come to be for me is actually through community, like through my dad loving me, through people in my life speaking into me. Like that has brought like I wasn't always there. Like I think I look back at some of the guys I dated early on and I think I might have settled and it wouldn't have been the right thing, but I didn't have my identity solidly in Christ at the time. So at this point in my life, I can't imagine making that choice just because it's like I have, well, and part of it too, along with that is not only is my identity in Christ, but like I have a mission. So I have like work to do, I have things that I'm called to. And
Mhm.
so I don't want to be with someone that's going to keep me from doing those things. And I say that with the caveat of I think people can be too much in their own like, well, I have to be done my mission and they better get on board with what I'm going to do. And like, okay, you have to be willing to like give and take with that. But at the end of the day, like we're all called as believers to live as that kind of outwardly looking, to serve other people. Like on a broad level, we all have a mission.
Mhm.
And is this person going to help me follow Christ better and help me help other people follow Christ better? Or are they going to take me off on a different journey? And I've dated people where I think it would have turned out that way. And it obviously was tempting. Like, obviously, there were moments where it was like, oh, I really want that. Like, but I couldn't say yes to it because there was like a higher calling than this calling. Like, oh, yes, I love the calling of being a wife and a mom, but like God's called me to be a disciple first. And so that gets top priority and that comes ahead of that. So that would be a part of it. And then I guess the more like maybe superficial side of it is like I feel so blessed to have built a life that I love. Like I love my life so deeply that for someone to interrupt that, they would have to be someone that loves Jesus, that is someone that adds to that. And
Mhm.
so I think that would be like the last bit of advice is, fill your life, make your life full because it's going to be a lot easier to say no to someone that deters you from the good things. And you'll also be able to tell the people that fit in and expand your life and make it better. But I say all of that with the fact that I also think that to an extent we all settle. Like in like for people, like I'm not perfect. Whoever I end up with isn't going to be perfect. And
Yeah.
just like with jobs, like I don't think any job I've worked has been the perfect job. Any place I've lived has been the perfect house. I don't expect to find like the perfect person, but
Right.
not settling on those really important things I think is so important. And I think the other part of it that like when I think about who I marry, like hopefully I'll have kids one day and that person, like I'm picking out my kid's dad. And like that's a very scary thought of just like, yeah, maybe I could put up with this, or maybe I'd be okay with that. But like, am I okay with my daughter being around that? Or am I okay with my son being like that? Like that's just another check for me too that I find really helpful of like, is this and not only if I even if I don't have kids, it just speaks to that person's character. And I think it's just a good reality check of like, oh, is this the kind of person I want to build a life with and a family with?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. That's really good. And I hope if there's anybody listening that is in the stage of life where they're dating, especially those that are younger, I mean, this is some advice that I wish that I had
Hmm.
whenever I was younger and maybe not approaching dating. I would not necessarily in the wrong way, just without
Hmm.
the proper perspective a lot of times. And
Hmm.
I look back and I was dealing with a lot of insecurities in my younger years
Hmm.
and kind of
Hmm.
projecting that into relationships and that,
Hmm.
I was
So easy to do.
very codependent whenever I was in my teenage
Hmm.
years and looking for validation through relationships, and that never ended up well. So thankfully, I have grown and matured and not in that space anymore. But I have empathy for people
Yeah.
that are because when you're growing and you're maturing, and depending on your life experience, it really
Hmm.
informs it really informs how you date. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really appreciate your perspective there. That's really good. I think that's everything that I've got for you. The last question that I love to ask, the show
Hmm.
is called In No Hurry. And so
Hmm.
I always love to ask my guests, uh, when life gets kind of crazy or busy, what are your go-to things or your go-to thing right now to sort of slow down and
Hmm.
um, just peel back from that hurried life?
Yeah. So good. I feel like I'm in a very hurried week, so it's a good thing for me to slow down and think about. But the two things that I would say help me slow down, one is journaling. I think taking time either in the morning or the evening to journal. I like to journal my prayers. I like to journal my thoughts. Writing down quotes, like all of that just helps so much just to get it out of my brain and onto paper.
Mhm.
But then also reading. I think I've been amazed at how like reading a book actually helps me like retrain my brain to focus. Like it slows my brain down and then
Mhm.
I can be more present in other spaces. Like in my mind, I'm always like, oh, like I need to slow my brain down so that I can read. And it's like, no, actually reading helps me slow my brain down and then helps me be able to slow down in other areas. So definitely reading has been one that I've really tapped into, especially when it's like fiction or a story. Like that really helps because you can kind of get lost in it and it's like I'm in just turning these pages and suddenly like time has passed. I'm like, oh, like I've slowed down. Like it's calming and you just get lost in those spaces. So
Yeah,
that'd be my answer.
that's great. Well, people that are listening, if they want to connect with you or follow you on Substack, social media, whatever the case, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my Substack is called Storystead Co. It comes from the idea of a homestead, and I thought that I'm a story maker, like a homemaker. So you can find me at Storystead Co. And obviously my name, Christina Book, is out there, and same for all of my social media. But Substack is the main place that you'll find me, and that's the main place that I write and share. So check me out on there. I'd love to find you, and love to have more people read along with me.
Well, great. Well, Christina, thanks so much. This was awesome. Happy we got to connect, and I'm sure we'll be in touch and hopefully collaborate on an article, multiple articles down the road. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, I hope Substack is around for a long time. I really like it. I've enjoyed connecting with a lot of different people like you on there. So, um, yeah, I would love for people that have not downloaded the app or checked it out, check it out. There's a lot of really good writing on there.
Yeah.
Just I've read some really awesome essays on there from people that
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, I really hope they write a book because this was great. So
Yes,
it's
I
really cool.
agree.
I had the thought the other day. I don't know if you ever were on Wattpad at any point, but
No.
it was an app where a lot of like aspiring creative writers, like fiction writers, short story writers,
Mm,
they would kind of put their work on there.
mm,
I tried it out. I was a creative writing minor whenever I was in college, and so I wrote some
mm,
short stories. And there was one that I was like, "This is okay. It's kind of good." I put it on there
mm,
just to see what kind of feedback. But I was like, I feel like Substack is kind of what
mm.
Wattpad was supposed to be. Um,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
I really like the social aspect of it, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks
Same
so
here.
much for joining. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks
I'm
for
sure
having
we'll
me. This was
I'm
such
sure
a
we'll
great
catch up again
conversation.
soon. Well, thanks so much for checking out this episode of the In No Hurry podcast. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Christina. I know I definitely did, and there's so much wisdom that I'm going to take away from that conversation, and I hope you will as well. Some of you may be watching this podcast because, yes, we are going to be trying to do more stuff on YouTube. So if you want to watch the In No Hurry podcast, you can do so by checking us out on YouTube. Just search In No Hurry Podcast with Cole Douglas Claiborne. You should find it there. There will also be links in the show notes to where you can find this show, not only on YouTube, but you can also check us out on TikTok now. So we're going to have more video clips from episodes, future and past episodes. Video editing is one thing that I have not done as well with this show, admittedly, but I have found a tool that is helping me with that. And so you will start seeing some clips from past episodes and obviously future ones as well. So if you're listening to this, make sure you go check us out on Instagram and TikTok. Just search In No Hurry Podcast and you should be able to find it. So give us a follow, give me a follow. You can just search Cole Claiborne. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I am on Substack, everywhere that you can think of. Obviously, check out Christina on Substack as well. I highly recommend that. All of the links for that are in the show notes. But as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have some time this week to relax and not be in a hurry, and we'll catch you next time.